So good evening to all of you. All of you will be, I think, writing prelims next year, 2024. Yes? Okay, fine. So 2024 only. 25. 2000 or 5000? 2000 or 5000? 2025 or 5025? Right. So from today onwards, we will be starting this very important topic in our syllabus, both from prelims and mains point of view. It is Indian polity. First of all, let me start with the introduction to the syllabus, why this topic is important from our examination point of view, and what are we going to discuss over a period of say around 40 classes, and how many questions can be asked from this topic. Then we will go into the syllabus. Let me ask you first of all, how many of you have studied say politics or polity in your graduation? Yes, very few, right? And it is good also, because if you have not studied anything, I can start from zero. If you have studied something, I'll have to start from minus infinity, because I have to remove all your unwanted knowledge and then start from zero. So then it becomes much more easier for us to deal with all these things. So why this is important? I know from our examination point of view, from both the prelims and the mains point of view. In our prelims, if you look at this polity, constitution or polity, in our prelims, every year minimum 11 to 14 questions will be there from polity. Out of 100 questions in prelims, every year minimum 11 to 14 questions are there. In 2021, around more than 20 questions were asked in prelims from only polity. Right? To put these things in perspective, what can we say? If you look at the last 3 years in your prelims, the cutoff in prelims is around say 49 questions, around 98 marks. This year it is expected to be around 44 questions only, around 88 marks. Right? So if you have to get 45 questions right in prelims to clear the prelims examination, around minimum 13-14 questions can be from only polity. Only from polity. So our objective when we do this polity is to make sure that at the end of our classes you have to get at least 80% of the questions right. If they're asking 10 questions, you must be able to score 8 questions right, so that it becomes that much easier for you to clear examination, prelims. As all of us know, prelims is the most difficult part of your entire process. Why? Because the prelims questions are highly unpredictable. Sometimes the questions given by UPSC, they themselves don't know what are the questions and what are the answers also. Right? That is the reason why UPSC is also known as a Unpredictable Service Commission, UPSC. Right? And some people call it as Uncertain Public Service Commission also. So in spite of all this kind of uncertainty, what we should be able to do is, with whatever the knowledge that we are gaining here, you should be able to score at least 80% of the questions from polity right. Why this is very important? Why? Because compared to all other topics in our prelims, what are the topics that you have in your prelims? You have polity, you have economy, history, geography, ecology and environment, then international relations, science and technology, current affairs. Of all these topics, what is so good about polity is that we can easily answer the questions in polity compared to other topics, because most of the questions in polity are from a definite spectrum. You can draw the boundaries there. We know that when we read this particular book, we know that when we have good knowledge of constitution, we can definitely answer the questions. That is not the case with say something like say history or geography. History, the more you read, the more you realize that you don't know anything about history. Right? You have to keep on reading history, and you read history so much that after some period of time, you will become part of history also. Right? So, and you don't know, because sometimes they can ask questions about Krishna-Deva Raya. Even Krishna-Deva Raya himself did not know the answer to the question. Right? Because that is what, please remember, the prelims examination is an examination of elimination. It is an examination of elimination, not selection. That is what you have to remember. I hope you know the process of examination, the 3 different stages and everything. So it is an examination of elimination wherein the UPSC objective is to eliminate non-serious candidates from the recruitment process. So they are not selecting. So whatever the marks that you are getting in the prelims, those marks will not have any kind of impact on you in your final ranking, final service or final selection. So that is the reason why. And another thing here is that the maximum amount of competition you find only in prelims examination. Every year around 1.1 million people, around 11 lakh people will apply for this UPSC examination, which is more than the population of most of the countries in the world. Right? Every year around 11 lakh people will apply, out of which around 6 lakh people will appear in the examination. Sometimes it can be less also. Out of which UPSC will take around 12,000 into mains, depending on the number of vacancies. So this is where you can see maximum competition. Maximum competition is there in the prelims. That is the reason why maximum number of students find it difficult to clear prelims. On the other hand, the rest of the stages in the examination process, mains and interview, they are of selection. Mains and interview are called process of selection. Prelims is the process of elimination. So in the main examination, it's not difficult at all, because if you have good writing skills, you can easily clear the mains, and if you have good personality, you can also easily get very good marks in the interview also, personality test. Whereas the most difficult part is the prelims examination. Right now, interviews are going on. You must be knowing, UPSC interviews are going on. Some of our students, they could not clear prelims continuously for 4 attempts. And in the 5th attempt, they cleared prelims, they cleared mains, and they are also now writing interview, attending interview. So that is what, that is why prelims is the most difficult part of the examination process. Once you clear prelims, it becomes that much easier also. Because out of 12,000, UPSC will pick up around 2,700 for interview. And finally, around 700 to 800 are selected for final positions in the government. So mains and interview are not that much difficult compared to prelims examination. And in this prelims examination, as I mentioned, it is highly unpredictable, uncertain. And what UPSC has done after 2015, UPSC has made CSAT mandatory. CSAT not only mandatory, CSAT is only qualifying in nature. That means whatever the marks you are getting in CSAT, it will not be counted for your final marks in the prelims examination. As all of you know, in CSAT you have to get only 1/3 of the marks. So CSAT is not going to decide your prelims selection. So what it is going to decide your prelims selection? It is only paper 1. Paper 1. So 100 questions in prelims will decide the fate of 6 lakh people. 100 questions in prelims will decide the fate of 6 lakh people. You can understand the kind of uncertainty involved in the examination process. And another thing here is that even though every year the number of candidates applying for this examination is on the rise, but the cutoff is coming down. Cutoff in the prelims examination is coming down. In 2016-17, the cutoff was around 116 marks out of 200. From there onwards, it had come down drastically to 93 last year. This year, when the UPSC announces final results, cutoff will be around 88 marks out of 200. That means you are getting only 44 questions right net after taking down the wrong answers. 44 questions out of 100, you will be clearing the examination, right? Normally in your graduation, first class means 60%. Here, 44% you are clearing, right? Just pass mark you are clearing. You can understand how difficult the questions can be. So that is the reason why what you have to do is you have to identify those areas from now onwards. You have to identify those areas where you can easily get those 44 questions right. Prelims examination requires what is called very structured, organized, systematic preparation. And focus on those areas where you can, because as I keep on saying, the most difficult part of your examination process is prelims, highly uncertain. So what you have to do, you have to identify those areas. One of those areas, as I said, is polity, for the simple reason that the syllabus is fixed. Mostly it is, revolves around constitution. And second thing is that the questions can be easily predicted because they will be asked from those things only. Third thing is that even you can also know the answers also. If you take rest of the questions, take the case of geography, you don't know the question, you don't even know the answer also. When you look at the examination hall, you don't know anything. So whereas some of these topics like polity, the advantage is that you know the answers also definitely. After coming out of the examination hall, you will come to know how many questions you could get right also. So that is the reason why this topic polity becomes very, very important. And the reason why this topic constitution, polity, governance becomes very important is tomorrow when you get into civil services, you are called a civil servant, IAS officers, and you have to deal with politicians. And more importantly, you have to implement the constitution. And to implement this constitution, what is required is knowledge of constitution. So after you get into IAS, you will go to Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, Mussoorie, for your training, foundation course training. It will be for around 3.5 months. There you will be taught again the same constitution and polity that you are studying now. Why? Because as an IAS officer, as a police officer, you are expected to implement rule of law, constitutional law. So you will be getting knowledge of this constitution and polity before you get into services. It will help you when you are in services also. Because once you know the constitution, once you know the fundamental rights, once you know the directive principles, once you know the relationship between the three organs of the state, it becomes that much easier for you to implement. Next reason why this is important from your examination point of view, we are living in what is called a parliamentary democracy. You have the politicians, what we call them as a political executive, the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister at the central level, and the Council of Ministers headed by Chief Minister at the state level. So you will be working under them. Then you should know what about their functioning, how do they function, what are their powers, what are their responsibilities, what are their functions, what are their privileges, and all those things we will be studying. It becomes that much more interesting. Why? Because this entire polity is about current events. When you are reading newspapers, you will be reading so many things in the newspapers. For example, recently Election Commission has recognized Eknath Shinde's faction as the real Shiv Sena. Then you will be studying as part of our polity, what are the powers of Election Commission and how these political parties are recognized. What are national political parties? What are the state political parties? And then Supreme Court comes out with so many judgments every day. Then you should know what are the powers of the Supreme Court. Then you can see in the newspapers on a regular basis, these opposition parties, especially ruled by the opposition ruled states, they would always criticize the functioning of the governor. You can see that there is so much of conflict between the governor of Tamil Nadu and the chief minister, governor of Kerala and the chief minister, governor of Telangana and the chief minister, and then West Bengal and the chief minister. Why this kind of conflict is there? That we will try to answer as part of polity. If nothing else, this polity is very, very interesting because it deals with day-to-day events. It deals with what we are watching in front of our eyes on a day-to-day basis. And you can easily connect yourself to these things, because when you read newspapers, when you watch news on television screen, then you will be having the questions in your mind. What is the reason why the governors are being severely criticized by some state chief ministers? You will be having questions like what is the reason why when our parliament meets, most of the time these meetings of a parliament are characterized by constant conflict between the ruling and opposition parties. Even the recent session of the parliament also, if you see, opposition parties demanded discussions on some of the crucial issues that the country is facing. Ruling political party says that they will not allow these discussions. Then the role of the speaker will become important. Similarly, you must have seen the ethics committee of the parliament has sent notices to Rahul Gandhi, asking him for explanation regarding the remarks he has made against Prime Minister on the floor of the House. Then what is this ethics committee? What are the privileges of members of parliament? So these are all the things which we watch on our national television on a day-to-day basis. The best part, as I said, is this polity will give us an opportunity to understand all of them, and also to analyze the things, because tomorrow when you become a civil servant, an IAS officer, you are expected to give suggestions to the political executive, the ministers, and you should have in-depth knowledge of the functioning of political systems, and that is where this polity can be more interesting for you. Of course, as I said, from the prelims perspective, every year very good number of questions are asked from this topic. And then when we talk about this constitution and polity from mains perspective, in mains we have GS paper 2. Here it is called constitution, polity, governance, social issues, and international relations. This is the name of the topic: constitution, polity, governance, social issues, and international relations. In 2013, UPSC made changes to the syllabus, wherein they have expanded the scope of the syllabus to include all of them. We will be now in our class discussing about constitution and polity. Out of these 250 marks, around 150 marks are from constitution and polity. IR will be around 50 marks, international relations, and governance and social issues will be around 50 marks. So from the mains perspective also, it is very, very important. Since 2013 onwards, what is the trend in UPSC in the main examination is people scoring less in GS paper 2. Scoring less in GS paper 2. On the other hand, GS paper 3, it used to be a normally high scoring one, whereas paper 4 again is a low scoring one, ethics paper. Sometimes people can get good marks. So what we have to aim for here is that out of these 150 marks, we must aim for at least 75-80 marks out of these 150 marks, because if you are getting 50% in the main examination, you will be there in top 10 ranks. In the main examination also, if you are getting around 50%, you will be there in top 10 ranks. So that is what our objective is. Since I think maximum number here is from science background. What is your academic? How many of you are from science background? Very good. Lot of them. Which means jobless growth. Right? Maximum are from science background. Right? Is it jobless growth or job loss growth? Yes. How many of you have had any experience of working? I think most of you had come straight from college only. Yes? Yes. Some of you only 1, 2, 3, 4 are have work experience. Right? And for them it is job loss growth. They have been thrown out of the job and that's why they came to UPSC. Right? No, they have resigned on their own. That is what we will say. Right? So when I went to UK and came back, people have asked me, why did you come back? I said that I had come back because I did not like the place. And you will not say that they have thrown you out. So, so that is what. So coming back here, so what since almost all of you from science background, and very few of you have studied this constitution or polity, what we will be doing, we will be starting from a very basics, from the lowest level, right? So that is the reason why initially we will go a little bit slow, because if I start teaching constitution and polity, say imagining that you are the best constitutional experts in the country, right? Then automatically next day you will run away, right? So we will go very slowly. We will try to define every term that we speak in the class, have conceptual clarity, and slowly what is required is you have to interlink so many things also. We talk about fundamental rights, we talk about preamble, we talk about directive principles of state policy, we talk about parliament, we'll talk about the president, judiciary, central, state governments, local self governments. At the end of the day, we have to interlink all of them also. These interlinkages will come to you as we proceed, because in the first class itself, automatically you will not be able to become a constitutional expert. As we study with our constitution, maybe tomorrow, our constitutional forefathers had come out with a constitution which is highly complicated in nature. That is the reason why we say that our constitution is a lawyer's paradise, a common man's nightmare. Nobody can really understand the constitution. For the last 75 years, we are trying to understand, and we have successfully failed also, right? So because the articles of the constitution are so abstract, especially for those who are from science background, they find all these things such stupid things, because in science everything is absolute. We say that add 2 molecules of oxygen and 1 molecule of carbon, and you will get CO2, carbon dioxide, right? H2O, 2 molecules of hydrogen and 1 molecule of oxygen, you will get H2O. But in constitution and polity, 2 plus 2 is not 4, it can be 22. It can be 22, right? But it will never be 4, right? So that is the reason why there is so much of what is called subjectivity. There is so much of subjectivity. That means it can be interpreted the way you like. That is the reason why you can see Supreme Court judgments. One day they say that this is what our judgment. After a few years, they say that the previous judgment was wrong and we are coming out with new judgment. After a few years, they say that both the judgments are wrong, we don't have any opinion also. Right? So, we have to live with it. Life is full of what is called ambiguities. There is nothing certain in life. So is with our constitution. So our constitutional forefathers, they had come out with a constitution. In the morning I was taking polity classes for another batch. So when it comes to election to the office of president, we have excluded some offices. And when it comes to impeachment, you are including them. The question that was asked, why we have excluded some of them and then we have included some of them? Why? There is no answer. That is what our constitutional forefathers have thought. What can we do? What can we do? As I said, it is not like a mathematics or physics or chemistry, wherein there is something called definitive pattern. There is what is called a structured relationship between the inputs and the output. That is what we call it as a theory in mathematics or physics or chemistry. In constitution and polity, you don't have that kind of a structured relationship. Everything depends on subjective interpretation. So Supreme Court is given the ultimate power to interpret them, because the articles of our constitution are so ambiguous. They can be subjected to different types of interpretations also. That is what we have to remember. So coming back here, this is where analysis becomes important. Analysis becomes important. Our constitutional forefathers said that we will have a parliamentary democracy, and they said that let this parliament make laws. But over a period of time, what we have seen is that our parliament is not functioning properly. For example, take the case of Lok Sabha. 43.5% of MPs in Lok Sabha at this point of time have criminal records against them. What we call it as a politicization of crime. Right? The questions will be asked, why there is so much of a criminalization of politics or politicization of crime? The questions will be asked, why the standards of our parliament have come down in recent times. How many of you have seen the proceedings of the parliament, being telecast live. Sometimes, yes, I also watch parliamentary proceedings sometimes when I get into depression. It gives me so much of happiness. Because for how long, will you watch Tom and Jerry? For your happiness, right? So on the floor of the house, you can see, in some state assemblies, you can see people snatching the mics and throwing at others, right? In some other state assemblies, they have taken the flower pots which are kept outside, and they are throwing those flower pots like missiles and others. And in some instances, one of the MPs had taken a pepper spray, and using that pepper spray and throwing it to the eyes of the people also. So these kind of events will give us so much of happiness also, right? So that is the reason why, as I said, at the end of the day, polity is also very interesting and more importantly entertaining also. Constitution can be a little bit boring, but polity is always interesting. So since we are discussing both constitution and polity, it becomes a good mixture of a good mixture of concepts as well as entertainment also. Because that is the difference between, say, other topics you study in your general studies. For example, you are studying about geography. In geography, where is the scope for entertainment? You will be studying about sedimentary rock. After studying sedimentary rock 100 times, you will become sedimentary rock, right? Because they deal with what you call non-living objects. Whereas in constitution and polity, you are talking about human beings, and none of the human beings are perfect. None of us are perfect. So those who hold positions of power, sometimes they behave in such a manner that it brings automatically smile on our face also. That is where, as I said, polity can be not only interesting but also entertaining also, right? So that is what it is. And from our examination point of view, as I said, whether it is prelims or mains, this is one of the most important topics in our syllabus. And of course, another thing that we have to remember here is that when we are studying constitution and polity, we are not restricting our discussions only to constitution and polity, but also we have to interlink them to others. For example, they are automatically linked to governance. Governance and polity, both of them are interlinked. We have to link it to governance also. And it is the political system that determines the functioning of economic system. So we have to interlink it to economy. And the functioning of political system is always decided by the value system of the societies. So that is where we have to link it to your ethics paper. It should be linked to ethics paper. For example, in our ethics paper, a question was asked: politics and ethics cannot go together. So you should know polity and you should also know ethics. And these kind of interlinkages are very, very important. And if you can understand, because since you are at the very, very beginning of your preparation, if you can mold your preparation in such a manner that wherein you can have those interlinkages, wherein you have the ability to understand those interlinkages, automatically your preparation can be what you call qualitatively superior to others. That is the reason why, as and when it is required, we will be interlinking all of them. It can be linked to the society. For example, take the case of the concept of secularism. Even though we talk about secularism in our preamble constitution, but it is always linked to society. Because secularism basically talks about the state treating each and every religion equally and not discriminating people on the basis of their religion. But in reality, this is what happens. People are discriminated. Why? That is where we have to bring in the society. That is where we have to bring in the social issues. That is where we have to bring in the ethics also. So that kind of interlinkages is what it is very important. And of course, as I keep on saying, every day newspapers will be very, very important for us, because whatever that comes in the newspapers, especially related to polity and constitution, are very essential for your preparation. So what I will be doing is that from tomorrow onwards, I will, towards the end of our class, I will give you the important articles that you have to read from newspapers from our constitution and polity point of view. Even if you cannot understand them, you can cut down those articles. And when we discuss those topics in our syllabus, I will refer to those articles so that you can have that interlinkages also. Right? Then proceeding further, let us look at the syllabus. Let us look at the syllabus of this constitution and polity. So let me take down the syllabus. You can also take down the syllabus of Constitution and Polity. After that, we will look at the sources also. What are the sources that you have to go through? Let us look at the syllabus. It starts with the Indian Constitution. It starts with the Indian Constitution. So, as part of this, we will be looking at the historical underpinnings. Historical underpinnings. That means we are basically talking about how our constitution has evolved over a period of time. Historical underpinnings, PINNINGS. Right. That means we are talking about how we have how we have come to the present constitution over a period of time. It all started with the British rule in India, 1757, Battle of Plassey. From then onwards, 1947. So over a period of 200 years, we have evolved our constitution, evolution of our constitution. There were so many regulating acts that were passed by the Britishers, and finally we had come out with our constitution. So we will be looking at the entire process. Before that, let me ask you this question. Have you done this modern history? Have you studied all those regulating acts? Yes? Okay, then it becomes that much easier for me, because these are the topics which are there both in your history as well as polity, historical underpinnings. Then evolution of our constitution. We will talk about evolution of our constitution. Then important features of our constitution. Important features of our constitution. Then amendments. Amendments that we have made to our constitution from 1950 till now. Amendments means the changes that we have made to our constitution. Then important provisions of our constitution, significant provisions. Significant provisions. And of course, this doctrine of basic structure. Doctrine of basic structure. BASIC, basic structure. So this is the first chapter in our syllabus. So what is this chapter? It basically gives an introduction to our entire constitution. How our constitution has evolved over a period of 200 years. From the British rule East India Company till 26th November 1949, when we have adopted our constitution. What are the changes? What are the processes that have taken place? Right? That is what we will talk about it. Then we will talk about what are the important features of our constitution. What are the important amendments to the constitution? Significant provisions of our constitution. Those are all the things. Even though this topic is too general in nature, we will be going specifically into each and everything. For example, we will start with, as I said, what exactly is a constitution? Why do we need a constitution? Then we will talk about how we have evolved our constitution over a period of time. Then we will talk about what is constitutionalism, what exactly is constitutionalism. Then we will talk about all the features of our constitution. So they are all very easy, not at all difficult, right? People who have prepared for this examination before you, they also could read, write, understand and reproduce in the examination. And please remember, maximum number of students who get into civil services are from science background, and they could easily understand all these things. So it is not at all that much difficult for you to do all these things. Only thing that is required is you need that kind of passion to learn many things, because what is the basic problem with our education system? The basic problem with our education system is that it is highly compartmentalized. What do you mean by that? A person from science background, you are studying physics and chemistry in your graduation. A person from science background does not know what is a fundamental right. For example, most of you are from science background. How many of you know what is a fundamental right? Right? A person from science background does not know what is basic structure of the constitution. How many of you know about basic structure? That is where the problem. And a person who studies, say, a constitution or polity does not know what is the difference between a Newton and Einstein. They don't know. That is what we say. Right? A person who studies history does not know what is physical deficit. That is where the problem with our education system. That's why National Education Policy 2020 has said that let us make our education more multi-dimensional. Let the students learn arts, sciences, and literature, accounting, everything. That is what is required. And why do you find it so difficult to learn these things normally? Why do the students find it difficult? Because they have not studied all these things. They have not studied. As I said, it is so compartmentalized that a person who studies physics does not know anything about economics. Whereas when you become an IAS officer, you need knowledge of everything. You are a generalist civil servant. That is the reason why UPSC says that let them gain knowledge in all these aspects also. That's why it takes time to clear this examination. But at the same time, what you must remember is that if you are preparing in a focused manner, you can easily clear this examination in the first attempt also. Please remember, you do not require more than 18 months of preparation for this examination. If you are starting from scratch, within those 18 months, you will be clearing prelims, you will also be clearing mains also. Right? That is what you have to remember. So the first topic in our syllabus is about this introduction to the Constitution. Then after that, we will go to the functions and responsibilities. Then next topic is of union and state governments. Functions and responsibilities of union and state governments. Then problems in federal structure. What are the major issues in federal structure? What are the major issues in federal structure? That means the major issues between the center and the states. Central and the states. As I said, you can see there is so much of a conflict between the governor and the chief minister. Governor is appointed by the central government, and the chief minister is the head of the state government. There are so many problems between the center and states. We will have to discuss all of them. Next, separation of powers. Next topic is separation of powers. Separation of powers between various organs of the state. Between various organs of the state. We talk about the three organs of the state: legislature, executive, and judiciary. Three organs of the state: legislature, executive, and judiciary. We will be talking about separation of powers between legislature, executive, and judiciary. And what are the conflicts between them? What are the solutions? These are all the things that we will be discussing. Then we will also be discussing the local self-governments. Local self-governments. In rural areas we have rural local bodies, and in urban areas urban local bodies. Gram panchayats, mandal parishads, jilla parishads, and municipalities, and other urban local bodies. We will be looking at all of them: rural local bodies and urban local bodies. This is also we will be looking at. Then we will also be looking at various constitutional bodies. Statutory bodies. We will be looking at their functioning also. Election Commission, a constitutional body. Finance Commission, a constitutional body. Our own UPSC, a constitutional body. A CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General, a constitutional body. So what is their functioning? What are their functions? What are their responsibilities? What are their powers? Whether they are functioning properly or not. We will be looking at all those things. Similarly, we will be looking at statutory bodies like human rights commissions, tribunals, and various other statutory bodies. Then we will also look at some of these executive organizations also, like CBI, right? So we will be looking at the functioning of all of them also. Nowadays you can see this CBI, ED, some of them are becoming controversial also. When you are reading the newspaper, that is what you can see. We will be looking at the functioning of all those bodies also, right? So this is broadly that we will be discussing. This is the syllabus of our Constitution and Polity. That is what UPSC mentions. So what we will be discussing as part of the syllabus, that is what, because as I said, the syllabus does not mention the full extent of the subject. You know how we are going to proceed. Let us see. As I said, first we will start with Constitution. We'll start with Constitution. Then we will go to slightly forward. Then we'll start with the first article of the Constitution, articles of the Constitution, second, third, fourth, like this. Then we will go to fundamental rights, right? Then we will discuss DPSP's directive principles of state policy. Then we will come to Parliament, legislature. Then we will go to executive. We will talk about the president, vice president, prime minister, council of ministers. Then we will go to judiciary. We will go to judiciary. We will look at the functioning of our judiciary, Supreme Courts, High Courts, what they are doing, what are the weaknesses in their functioning. Then we will go to state governments, governors, chief ministers, center-state relations, all those things. From there, we will come to the third tier, local self-governments, and finally, we will go to constitutional bodies also. This is how we are going to proceed with the syllabus. Now, proceeding further, what are the important sources for this topic? What are the things that you have to read for this topic? Pardon? If you read Constitution, you will never understand. So, what are the important sources? This is very important for us. The best part of this topic in our syllabus is that we have so many sources. Best part is there is no scarcity of material. You have so much of material. The worst part is that, yes, you have so much of material also. Right? So you have to choose, rightly what you are going to study. Please remember, UPSC examination is all about knowing what not to study than what to study. This is the most important secret I would like to reveal in the first class itself. Yes, secret. Yes, why? Because when you have so much of syllabus, so much of material in front of you, you don't know what to study and you start studying everything. Is it possible for you to remember everything that you study? Is it possible? How many of us have the memory power like Swami Vivekananda? One day Swami Vivekananda, he was given a dictionary. He was sitting in a railway station and he was given a dictionary. He read the entire dictionary in the overnight, during the evening to night. Next day morning, he said that now you ask me any term in the dictionary, I will tell you the meaning of that term. How many of us have that kind of IQ? After reading dictionary overnight, we can remember at least one term, the meaning of which also we don't know. Right? So let us not have any what is called hallucinations about our abilities. Right? Have you ever checked your IQ? No. Please don't also. Right? Right. Otherwise, honestly, we get into depression also. Right? This, profession gives opportunities for people to meet so many different types of people. Long time back, around 2000, I think 9 or 2010, long time back, I had a student. His IQ was incredible. The kind of IQ he had. You give any book to him, 300 pages, he will read the book overnight, and next day he will come and tell me, what is there in each and every page of the book also. That kind of IQ. Yes. I don't know, not the same person. Those kind of people will never give ads, please remember. Right? He got into IAS long time back, so he will not be doing those kind of things. Right? So, that is the kind of IQ he had. And I'm sure none of us have that kind of IQ. How many pages can you read in 1 hour? You never tested, leave it. Right? So, try to test it. How many pages can you read in 1 hour? Not only reading, understanding also. Right? So, that is what it is. Let us accept the fact that, we are not such highly intelligent people. Why should I include myself also? You are not such intelligent people. Right? So, for the sake of Article 14, right to equality, right against discrimination, I am also including myself. Right? So, automatically, it becomes almost impossible to remember so much of material. That is the reason why what you must know is this examination is all about knowing what not to read than what to read. With so much of material, as I said, when it comes to constitution and polity, we have so much of study material. So that is the reason why the first source is Indian Polity by Lakshmikant. It is a very good book, in spite of the fact that there can be some clerical mistakes, printing mistakes in the book. It is still one of the best books for your polity. Indian Polity by Lakshmikant. Still, almost every question in your prelims examination can be answered with this book. That is what I said. The advantage with polity is that the syllabus is clearly defined. Boundaries can be clearly drawn also. And this is one book wherein you have almost the entire syllabus covered. Out of 11 or 12 to 13 questions they are asking in prelims, almost 95% of the questions can be answered from this book only. That is the advantage. Please remember, I said that this is for prelims. Right? I am not saying it is for mains. Of course, good number of questions from mains also can be answered from this book. So the first one is Indian Polity by Lakshmikant. And of course, your Vision study material also. It is also good. It is also because it has given analytical aspects also. Study material. I think you must have got around 5 or 6 booklets for polity. Yes? How many? 6. Right. Very good. So at least you remember the number of books. Do you know what is there in those books? Have you ever really bothered to open the books? Right? You will say that Indian Polity, book 1, Indian Polity book 2. I am not talking about that. Open the book and see what is there inside also. Right? Right now, you are in the process of collecting more material as part of your preparation. By collecting more material, what happens? You become only materialistic in life. Right? So beyond that, nothing else. And by attending classes, you become classical. More classes you attend, more classical you become. Right? So that is the reason why, as I said, let us not go beyond these two things. And of course, our class notes. This is the most important thing. Yes, I can give you the assurance definitely that almost every question that UPSC will be asking can be from our class notes. That much assurance I can give you. So, especially for your main examination. In the main examination, it is more of analysis. Right? So, this is what our class notes, which covers both extensively prelims as well as mains. And I will try to dictate almost everything in the class. I will try to dictate everything in the class so that it becomes that much more comprehensive also. And this Polity Lakshmikant can be your reference material also. That means if you need more explanation than what we have discussed in the class, you can always refer to Lakshmikant. And this constitution by D.D. Basu or any other author, it is slightly difficult because it becomes difficult for you to understand those things. The language is so technical that it becomes difficult for you. So that is the reason why I would not suggest you to go through the bare acts or go through the original constitution, because once you enter into it, it is like getting into the black hole and you don't know how to come out of it. So you want to make your life much more simpler and easier. Let us not unnecessarily complicate our life. That is the reason why let us have only 3 sources. And of course the most important one is newspapers. Every day you have to read minimum 2 newspapers. Minimum, I said minimum. Maximum, that is the question, very good, because I like this kind of questioning, right? Right. The same question was asked to UPSC chairman, former UPSC chairman. So he was asked, what should the students read for UPSC examination? He said that why should students read only 2 newspapers? Let them read 10 newspapers. This examination, please remember, starts and ends with newspaper reading. It starts and ends. Sometimes some things which may not be to your liking, but which is true. It starts and ends with newspaper reading, because it is maximum about current events. Entire polity is all about current events. So it is better you are reading a minimum 2 newspapers. And someone is asking NCERT, should we read NCERT? The thing is that you should have read NCERT when you were in class 10th or 11th. At that point of time you did not read. What is the point of reading it now? You have completed class 10th long time back when Ashoka was ruling India. Right? You want to go back to the ancient times. But still, NCERTs are good for your basic preparation. But please remember, these NCERTs are neither necessary nor sufficient. They are good in the sense that you have the psychological satisfaction that you have studied NCERTs, after 100 years after where you should have studied otherwise. You should have studied 10th standard NCERTs when you were in 10th, when you did not study then. Right? Have you studied NCERTs? 10th and 11th standard? Some of you might be having a central syllabus or state syllabus. NCERTs are for the central syllabus. Then those who had studied in the central syllabus, they must have studied NCERTs. Of course, you have studied them long time back. So you have forgotten all of them also. Because for us, yesterday means ancient history. Whatever we have studied yesterday, we will forget all of them today. And NCERTs you studied long time back. So there is no question of remembering anything, including NCERT. What is the abbreviation for NCERT? What is the acronym? NCERT? Okay, very good. It means you don't know, leave it. Right? So, that is the reason why the only advantage with NCERTs is that the NCERTs are written in a very simple manner, because they are written for children. So that is the reason why they are written in a very simple manner. You can read them also because you are still, your IQ levels are still same as children, or sometimes less than. With increase in your age, IQ levels are also going down. Inverse relationship. So it is better, if you want, you can read NCERTs. But this is what is required. These are all the things. Newspapers. You have to read 2 newspapers. One is the Hindu. Second one is Indian Express. Yes. These 2 newspapers. Otherwise, you can read the Times of India also. These 3 newspapers. Very good. So that is what the study material. This is what the study material. And more importantly, of all the things that we have mentioned, the most important thing that you have to remember is our class discussions. because you can read as much as you want. But what is there in that book, you can understand only when you are being taught about those things in a more proper and efficient manner. That is where classes become very, very important, right? So make sure that you are not missing out on classes. After what happens is that after some point of time, say after 1 week or 10 days, you understood a little bit of polity. Then immediately you start thinking that I have become a constitutional expert. Who is this guy to teach us, right? Let us do the things on our own, right? So do not have those kind of hallucinations. It is better that you attend the classes, and especially those who are in the classroom. The best thing is attending it in the classroom in the physical presence, because you can always ask questions. Those who are attending online also, it is better if they attend live classes rather than watching recordings, because when you are attending live classes, your participation and your concentration can be much higher compared to when you are watching the recordings, because you have this luxury of watching the recordings also, and you have this tendency also, let me watch the recordings, 3 hours of class, you will put it in a fast mode and you will complete it in 1 hour also. I think that is what you have done, or you will be doing also, right? So there cannot be any shortcut to success. You have to work hard. And most important thing is, when you are preparing for UPSC examination, it means that consistently you have to study for minimum 8 to 10 hours a day, consistently. And it is very, why? It is very simple. Why? Because you have to get into services. And once you get into services, you don't know the kind of power that you have. You don't know the kind of power that you have. I'll just give you one example here. A student, he had come to me, not now, long time back, 10 years back, more than 10 years, 12 years back, and just finished his engineering. And he had come to me and he said that I want to prepare for UPSC examination. I said, fine. What should I do? Tell me. He did not know anything. He did not know ABC of UPSC examination. I said that do the things the way I tell you to do, and don't ask any questions. Just do the things, and you will be there. And I said around 18 months. He had come to me in the month of this year, last year May. Then within the next 2 years, he'll be taking the examination next year, say this year May. Final results would be coming next year May. So the entire process is around 2 years. First attempt he got into services, and he studied minimum 10 hours a day. I said that don't ask any questions, just study for 10 hours a day. What to study I will tell you, how to study I will tell you. And he used to study in the evening. Normally, those who are from engineering science background, they have this bad habit of studying in the nights, right? Because they think that they can concentrate better during night time. He used to study evening around 5 o'clock and till morning around 4, 5 o'clock, non-stop, taking break for dinner, otherwise nothing else. I said that take your mobile phone and throw it into the dustbin, first of all, because we are addicted. At least now, the smartphones are there. In those days, there was not much of smartphone, 12 years back. And then I said that, don't have any social media also, because you don't need to talk to others. What is required is only your own preparation. If you have any doubts, I said, you come and ask me, I will clear all your doubts. And when you study like this, as around 18 months, then you will get into services. First attempt, he got into IPS. He missed out on IAS by only 3-4 marks. And then second attempt, third attempt, he got into IPS. Fourth attempt, he got into IAS. And he was posted in UP, Uttar Pradesh. First, he was posted in Yogi Adityanath constituency, Gorakhpur. And the Chief Minister was so impressed with his work. He got a call from PMO, Prime Minister's office. And they said that, you are being now posted to Varanasi. And he was given the responsibility of this, constructing this Kashi Vishwanath corridor. You must have heard about this. And he was given the responsibility of constructing this Kashi Vishwanath corridor. Very young, at the age of 27, 28. Such huge responsibility. And again, Prime Minister was so impressed with his work. Immediately after the work was over, then this Jammu and Kashmir was converted into Union Territory. The Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir requested the PMO, please send him to Jammu and Kashmir. He went there and he had become a special secretary to the governor there. Very young age, And then only 1 week back he came to meet me. And he came in a special flight. He was the only person who was there in the flight. because of security reasons. Right? Met the Home Minister, came to Delhi, and then immediately left. That is how the kind of life you can have when you get into services. And you can do, anyone can do it. And please remember, all these people are not extraordinary intelligent people. And on the other hand, you don't require huge amount of intelligence, IQ, to clear this examination. I spoke about that guy with such huge amount of IQ. He could not clear this examination in 2 attempts. Twice he attended interview. And the third attempt he came to me. And he said that, I am writing good answers, everything is there, but I am not able to clear the examination. I said that, okay, no problem, give me your answers, let me see how you are writing. And he had written some answers, and next day he came to me and he showed me the answers. I said, if you want my honest opinion, I will give you. And he said that, no, please give me your honest opinion, because twice I have attended interviews, but I could not clear the examination. I said that, these answers are useless. Simple. The only word I have used was useless. Through these answers, you are trying to showcase your IQ, intelligence. UPSC is not looking for it. You are putting so much of information in your answers which is not at all required. You will never get into services. You will get interview call, you will go to UPSC, attend interview, come out, have a cup of coffee in the canteen, come back and prepare for examination again. Because that is not what UPSC is expecting from you. And I thought that he would never come back because he was so offended by my remarks. He would never come back. But after 1 week he came back and said that, okay, tell me what should I do now. And then I just told him how to change his preparation, how to write answers and everything. And after writing the test series, the last test was over. He was taking the examination in his home state, Maharashtra, Mumbai. And I told him that if you are writing the same answers that you are writing here now, take it from me that you will be there in top 10 ranks. Come what may, you will be there in top 10 ranks. If you are not there, you please come and tell me. If you are there, you don't have to call me also. If you are writing the same answers. Examinations were held. He was the top ranker, top scorer in general studies. In those days, there used to be 2 optionals. In all these papers, he was the top ranker, top scorer. And he got 5th rank. At the end of the day, what I am trying to say here is that in spite of so much of uncertainty about this examination, if you prepare in a very methodological manner, nobody can stop you from getting into services. That is what it is. And the kind of reward you will be getting is incredible. If you work hard for 18 months, definitely for the next 35 years, your life is just like a picnic with so much of power. Once you get into services, you have so much of power, so much of prestige, so much of name, fame, money, dowry. Last one is the most important one. Right? One of our students, he got 500 crores dowry. 500 crores. Right? This is to motivate you. And please remember, this is only for one section of society. In India, we have not progressed so much that women are also getting dowry. That is not there. So this is only for one section. Right? So he got 500 crores dowry also. And before that, he got into services and he was trying to get into IAS. He told me that, sir, please make sure that I get into IAS because I have an offer of 500 crores for dowry. He got into services. It is a win-win situation. He got into IAS as well as 500 crores dowry also. But of course, he did not share a single rupee with me. Right? So that is what it is. That is what, these are the kind of benefits that you can have. And, you might be thinking that it is the politicians who are ruling the country. No, not the Chief Minister, not the Prime Minister. Who are ruling the country are bureaucrats. Because the politicians will be there only for 5 years. Once you get into services, you will be there for 35 years. 35 years. And politicians don't know anything about administration. And they have to depend only on you for survival. We say that our present Prime Minister is the most powerful Prime Minister the country has seen since our independence. Say, the only Prime Minister that can be compared to is Indira Gandhi. Right? But still, our Prime Minister cannot do anything without the assistance of bureaucracy. That is where you can become extremely powerful. So that is the reason why I said, if you can sacrifice your presence, if you can sacrifice your present, the future can be great for you. If you can consistently study around 8 hours per day from now onwards, right? Then nobody can stop you from getting into services. Nobody can stop you. Sometimes it can become a little bit late, but you will definitely be there in services, and it is worth the effort to put in, looking at the kind of rewards that you have. So that is the reason why make sure that you are not what is called digressing, diverting your attention from your studies. There are so many distractions in your preparation. You must make sure that you are not influenced by those distractions. You should have single-minded focus. Why? Because everything in life can wait. Your friends, and then your social life, everything can wait. Because after getting into services, you can have all those enjoyments. And just sacrifice for 2 years, 3 years, then you will have everything in your life. That is what you have to make sure. So you should not complain at all about working hard, because at the end of the day, you are working for yourself only, right? So that is what you have to remember. Since, as I said, most of you are from science background, the main examination is all about answer writing. You have to write as many answers as you can. This guy I am talking about from engineering background, who came to me immediately after the graduation. He took the examination at the age of 21 and got into services at the age of 22. Very simple. And he had written at least minimum 500 answers before going to the examination. And 2 years back, we had this top ranker, Pradeep Singh, from Haryana. He came to me almost, I think, he got into services in the year 2020. He came to me around 2014 or 15. And for the first time when he had written answers, I had given him around 50 marks out of 250. 50 out of 250 means such a low score. Since he was from science background, answer writing always becomes difficult. By the time he went to the final attempt, I gave him around 160 marks out of same 250. In the UPSC examination, he got the same marks, and he became the topper. So to move from 50 to 160, it had taken him almost 4 years, right? So this examination is not that easy. Please remember, it is not that easy. It takes time, and you have to have that kind of patience. You cannot expect any instant results also. Sometimes some people can clear this examination in their first attempt. Those who are clearing this examination in their first attempt, they are the ones who must have been preparing for this examination a long time before also. 5 years back, a girl had come to me. She was in her graduation first year. And from then onwards, she started already completing all the topics in a GS. And at the age of this graduation first year itself, she used to write so many answers. When she took the examination ultimately, she got into top 15 ranks, first attempt. So those who are getting into services in the first attempt, they must have prepared, for at least a minimum 4 to 5 years before they had given the first attempt. And that is what you have to remember. Of course, in our class, I said we will be focusing on answer writing also, a lot on answer writing, because we will be covering this polity both from prelims and mains point of view also, right? So this is how we will be proceeding. If you have any kind of doubts, you can ask. Then otherwise we will get into the syllabus. Any doubts? Can you use a little bit Hindi? See, you have to write the examination only in English. Yes, that is what I am saying. From now onwards, what you have to do, you have to think in English. You have to, communicate in English. You have to converse in English, because you have to write in English. That's why I said practice. If I start using Hindi, then when you go to the UPSC examination hall, when you are writing answers in the main examination, all those Hindi terms will come to your mind. Then it becomes difficult for you. That is the reason why, even if it is difficult, let us have entire class only in English only. Even if it is difficult. I will not be using extremely difficult words. I am using very, very simple words. I am not going to speak like Shakespeare or Shashi Tharoor, right? If I speak like Shakespeare or Shashi Tharoor, only they can understand, not ordinary people. That is the reason why I will be using very, very simple language, very simple language. And wherever you are finding it difficult, you can always stop me, right? But make sure that you are communicating, thinking. How to how to get fluency in English language. How to get, especially those who have studied from say their mother tongues. It becomes difficult to get fluency in English language overnight. So what to do? Very simple. It has to be again a continuously learning process. First and foremost, you start reading the newspapers, especially Hindu newspaper. Vocabulary is very, very good. You read the sentence, you have not understood the sentence. There are some words you have not understood. Immediately go to the dictionary, try to find out the meaning of the word, and try to write it at least 10 times so that you can remember. Right? Next thing what you have to do is that how to become proficient in English language. Whenever you are talking to your friends, make sure that you are deliberately communicating only in English. It becomes difficult. They might think that you have become a very, very highly egoistic person. You don't have any respect for your mother tongue. Nothing like that. Because at the end of the day, you are trying to write this examination. I'm sure all of you will be writing this only in English language, right? Then you have to develop it. There is no other way. And whenever you are thinking in your mind also, try to think in English language. Try to say that tomorrow I should be doing these things, rather than saying, मुझे तो ये काम करना है कल के. So try to think in English. That is how you improve. It does not take much of time. Maybe in around 5 to 6 months, you will become proficient. You don't have to, as I said, you are not going to use the kind of words that even Oxford Dictionary also does not know. Not at all. You have to write in very, very simple language. You don't need, it is said that Shakespeare, he knew maximum number of words in English, more than 1 lakh words. You don't require, with around 200, 300 words, you can manage entire thing. But you have to start somewhere. The journey towards 1,000 miles always starts with the first step only. But you have to take that first step. You must be willing to, you must have that kind of courage to take that first step. So make sure that you are developing proficiency in English language. That is very, very important. Right? Yes. See, it's a good question. How we can interlink Lakshmikant and the newspapers. That is what I will be doing in the class. I will be doing in the class. After around 40 days of our classes, you will be able to do those things on your own very easily. You leave that to me, how to interlink the things. Everything you can leave it to me. And what you have to do, just go through what we are doing in the class on a day-to-day basis. And one more thing, you should always never proceed with any doubts. Any kind of doubts, you can stop me, you can ask questions. Because whenever you are studying a new topic, whenever you are studying a completely new paper, there will be not many doubts. You can always ask and clarify all your doubts. And there is nothing like a silly doubt. If you don't ask doubts, you become silly. Right? So never afraid of asking any questions. If you don't have any doubts, you can still ask me. I will create doubts in your mind. And then I will clarify. Right? So always, feel free to ask any kind of doubts. That is also very, very important. Anything else? See, if you find any term in the newspaper difficult, you can always ask me in the class. I can be your Google cum Wikipedia. Right? I will explain all this. First, start reading. Then rest of all other things also very difficult. Someone is saying that editorials are difficult to understand and analyze. How to analyze? You cannot understand and analyze editorials today. When you are starting your preparation today, you cannot become an expert overnight. Those who are writing those editorials are having an experience of at least 35, 40 years. Can you, become equal to them overnight? Obviously not. So, don't try to unnecessarily overstress, overreach yourself. So you cannot understand. It is a gradual process. As I said, whenever it is important, from our class point of view, I will say that keep that editorial with you. When the topic comes, I will be discussing in the class. Yeah. I have not introduced myself yet. Okay, people are also from, online also they are asking. So, what is there to introduce? First, Yes, my journey, and it is like Mahatma Gandhi's experiments with the truth. Right. So there is not so much great to know about myself. Right. Anyway, since you have asked, I will tell you. I have done a post-graduation in economics. Yes. Then someone is saying, "Sir, you look very familiar." I don't know what you mean by that. Familiar, in English language there is so much a problem. Familiar or notorious, So, if I'm looking like an Naxalite or a terrorist, that is also familiar, right? So I've done the post-graduation in economics. Then I took UPSC examination. I have attended interview. I left UPSC at the age of 25 years. I did not give my full attempts also because it's enough, I thought. Then after that, I worked with Indian Express newspaper in Bombay. From there, I went to London, UK. I went there for a job there, economic advisor to the British government in a treasury. So I was there for some time because my background is economics. There are only two people in our country who studied economics in depth. One is Manmohan Singh, and second one is the person in front of you. Right. So he had forgotten his economics and he had become prime minister. Right. I could not forget economics. That is the reason why I had become a teacher. Right. So my optionals in UPSC were economics and public administration. Public administration I took because my father was also a professor of public administration. Of course, I never took any kind of guidance from him because egoistic. You believe that you know everything in the world. Myself and some of my friends are highly egoistic people. We think that we know everything in the world. So that is the reason we believe that we don't have to know anything from others also. So most of my UPSC preparation was only on my own only, because economics, since I've done a post-graduation in economics, so I don't require any kind of coaching. Public administration also mostly I studied on my own. I was basically from, in fact I am from Andhra Pradesh, so I took my examination in Hyderabad only. I did not come to Delhi for any preparation, and I came to Delhi only once to attend a UPSC interview. Otherwise I did not come to Delhi. Then after staying in London for some time, I felt that it was getting bored, so I came back, and then after that I started teaching. So that is my biography. As I said, my experiments with UPSC, right? Where did polity? Because entire public administration, Indian administration is nothing but Indian polity. In public administration paper 2, for example, Indian polity, if you read 10%, in Indian administration you read 100%. So automatically, if you are teaching Indian administration, you always have very good knowledge of polity. And normally I teach in the UPSC, I teach polity because I studied this, and I teach economics, economic because my option was economics and I studied a lot of economics. Then I like teaching ethics. And since 2013 onwards, when they introduced, I have been teaching this ethics. So these are all the things that I teach, right? And since I know all these things, a little bit of everything, we can interlink these things better also. That is what is required for this examination. So that is what it is, right? I think all of your doubts are cleared, right? Do you want any break? Right. This is the only question for which I get most enthusiastic response every day. Any class, I will get most enthusiastic response only for this question, right? And one more thing, when the class is at 5 o'clock, right? When the class is at 5 o'clock, make sure that you are in the class before 5 o'clock, because whatever may be the circumstances, we will always start class on time. Discipline is very, very important in life, right? I'll just give you an example for this discipline and punctuality. Again, long time back, 10 years back, I think 2012, I was conducting this test series, and it was in Mukherjee Nagar. And it was the last examination in the test series. It was raining heavily. Out of around 250 students who were supposed to be there, only 10 students could, had come to take the last test. And it is no surprise at all. Those 10 students were ultimately there in the final selection also. That is the kind of sincerity and commitment that is required. You can give hundreds of excuses for not doing things. I'll give you only one reason why you should do the things. Because you have to get into services. Every day, at least for 1 hour, you should be writing. Because you have to focus on improving your writing skills. There is a saying in English, practice makes the man perfect. Sometimes women also. Right? No, let me complete. Let me complete the statement. Why? Because women are already perfect. Right? So, they don't have to practice. So, you can take a break for 10 minutes and then after that, we will start with our syllabus. Right? So let us start with our syllabus. So the first topic it starts with the Constitution. So before starting our syllabus, as I said, we should know why should we read all these things, all the things that are there in our syllabus. Why should we know about Constitution? Why should we know about polity? Why should we know about governance and everything else? Why? Because forget about UPSC preparation. If you are a citizen of the country, the bare minimum that you are expected to know is who are in positions of power. How do they exercise their power? Why do they exercise power? What is the relationship between those who are in positions of power and ordinary citizens? This is what is called basic common knowledge. First of all, why should there be any government at all? Why do we need any government? Can't we have a situation wherein, we can live freely? We can live freely without any government, any restrictions. Right? Can't we have that kind of situation? That is what they say. We say that if any person takes birth, there are 2 things in life of which he cannot avoid. If any person takes birth, 2 things. First one is death. Any person who takes birth has to die. Right? Is there any what we call immortal person? Any person who has not died? Jesus Christ died. So is with Gautam Buddha or Mahavir Jain. So is Guru Nanak. All of them have died. One thing that is inevitable after we take birth is death. Second thing they say is taxes. Taxes. When you take a birth, it means that you have to pay taxes. And you might be under the misconception that since you are not earning money, you are not paying any taxes. Both of them are completely different things. Whether you earn money or not, you have to pay taxes. And if you don't pay taxes, the government will make sure that you will die also. Both of them are inevitable. Right? So why are you paying taxes? Why are you, why should there be any government at all? Why should there be any government at all? If you are earning money, you have to pay 30% of your income as taxes. What the government is doing with that money? Why should the rulers have so much of power? Why should be there any government at all? That is the question that we have to answer. Why should there be any constitution at all? Can't we live without governments? Can't we live without constitution? The answer is we cannot. That is the reason why we need a constitution. We need a government. Why? Why? Because human beings, this is what we say, they are always guided by self-interest. This is the tendency of human beings. All of us are guided by only self-interest. This is what we study in our ethics paper also. Is it possible for any person to be completely selfless? Can you expect? Can any person to be selfless completely? Right? No. For example, you are extremely hungry. You did not have food, say for 10 days. Suddenly, someone has given you food. And that person had come and he said that he did not have food for 20 days. He said that please give me your food. Will you? Will you? How many of you will give? One person. Very good. Those who have raised hands, they should be in museums or geological parks. Right? Human beings, because they are not normal. They are abnormal. So human beings are always guided by self-interest. And what is the problem here? The problem here is that there is no saturation point for this self-interest. There is no limit. For example, if I ask you the question, how much amount of money, how much amount of money that you want, for the rest of your life? How much amount of money that you want for the rest of your life? Or let me put the question in a more simpler manner. If I give you 1,000 crores today, how many of you will stop preparing for UPSC? Very good. Right? So coming back here, since there is no limit to self-interest, what happens? This self-interest can easily transform itself into selfish interest. It can easily transform itself into selfish interest. Then what happens? Everyone will start exploiting the other person. That is what Charles Darwin also has said. Survival of the fittest. So in the medieval times, ancient and medieval times, it was the physical strength that has helped the people to exploit others. You had the slave trade, you have the racial problem. In India, it was a caste discrimination. We said that some people belonging to backward castes, they should be treated as untouchables, and they were exploited. At the end of the day, as Karl Marx says, the entire history of human civilization is nothing but exploitation. Right? So in the modern times, this exploitation is not because of physical strength, it is because of their intelligence. Using your knowledge, using your intelligence, you can become a businessman and you can exploit people. Otherwise, exploitation will always be there in the societies. Because there is no limit as far as self-interest is concerned. As I said, you ask any businessman, is there any limit for their profits? Is there any saturation point? Saturation point means upper limit. Is there any upper limit for the profits of any businessman? For example, a Mukesh Ambani has earned the amount of money which is sufficient for next 1,000 generations also. Will he come tomorrow and say that from now onwards, I will do business only for the sake of the society? No. Why? We say that there is saturation point for everything in life, but not for money. So this kind of exploitation can keep on going all the time. If this kind of exploitation becomes much more severe, what happens? Those who are being exploited, they would revolt. It can result in a collapse of the civilizations also. It can result in collapse of civilizations. So how to prevent this exploitation? How to prevent this manipulation? That is where we need a constitution. That is where we need governments. That is where we need a rule of law. That is the reason why we need these constitutions. Similarly, we say that the tendency of any civilization, is to move towards entropy. That is what we say. Tendency of any civilization is to move towards entropy. Entropy means anarchy, lawlessness, and destruction. With the passage of time, what we say is the only thing that is certain is you are moving towards end. That is the reason why I find it strange when people celebrate their birthdays. With every birthday, what is happening? You are moving towards your end. Let us assume that you live for 90 years. You are celebrating say 21 years birthday. That means you will be living for another 69 years. Next year, 68 years. I don't know why people are celebrating their death days. With every birthday, you are only moving towards end. That is what I said. With the passage of time, the only thing that is certain is death and destruction. In the same manner, take the case of institutions, civilizations. They are created by human beings. When human beings are not permanent, can the institutions created by human beings be permanent? When we are not permanent, can the institution created by us are permanent? No. So with the passage of time, that is what is only certain is entropy. So if you want institutions to continue for longer period of time, you want institutions to continue. If there are no institutions, what happens? Civilizations will collapse. If you want these institutions to continue, you need a mechanism that will ensure what is called negative entropy. Positive entropy means destruction. Negative entropy means continuation, survival. And how to do this? This is possible with the help of a constitution. This is possible with the help of a government which is being run according to the constitution. Look at what is happening in Afghanistan right now. In Afghanistan, is there any government? No. That is the reason why it becomes difficult. You need someone to protect your life. You need someone to protect your property. You need someone to give you that freedom of speech and expression. You need someone to give you that right to life and personal liberty. And that someone has to be government. And this government must function according to the constitution. They must function according to the constitution. For example, take some of these countries which are having a dictatorship. Take the case of Arab countries. They have dictatorship. Take the case of a country like communist China. They have dictatorship. China has imposed strict lockdown. Very, very strict lockdown. Could the people do anything? No. Why? Because it is a dictatorship. It is a dictatorship. And that is where we need a constitution. We need a democratic government. What is the difference between a dictatorship and a democracy? Both of them are governments only. What is the difference? In case of dictatorship, the dictator has absolute powers. He can do anything and everything. There is nothing like rule of law. There is no guarantee to the rights of citizens. There is no guarantee to the lives of people also, the freedoms of people. That is the reason why we need democracy. So it so happened, one American and one Russian, they were talking about their own countries, full of patriotism. So American has said that we have the kind of government wherein I can go to my president and say on his face, Mr. President, you are a fool. That is the kind of freedom America has. Russian has said, what is so great about it? I can also go to my president and say that American president is a fool. That is the difference between democracy and dictatorship. So we need a constitution to protect the rights of the people, to protect the liberties and freedoms of the people, to ensure rule of law. We need a constitution. And this constitution has to be implemented by a government which is elected by the people. What is called democratic government. Imagine in India, let us assume that there is no government for one single day. There is no rule of law. One single day. The government says that in the next 24 hours, whatever you want to do, you can do. You will not be punished. What will you do? Let me check your criminal intelligence. You will sleep. That's so idiotic. Okay. What will you do? What will you do? You will go to bank, take out all the money, because everything that you do will not be punished. Can you ever imagine? Can you ever imagine a situation? Can you ever imagine a situation wherein there is no government, there is no rule of law? Can you ever imagine a situation? Just imagine, very simple. Once you get out of the institute, there is a red light there. Imagine the red light is not working for half an hour. What happens? The traffic jam will be there. In the same manner, when there is no government, when there is no rule of law, when there is no constitution, what happens? Society will automatically collapse. That is the reason why we need a constitution. We need a constitution to protect the lives of the people. We need a constitution to make sure that exploitation will not become the order of the day. Otherwise, what happens? Darwin's principle, survival of the fittest. Those who are mentally and physically stronger will keep on exploiting weaker sections of society. And if this kind of exploitation becomes much more severe, what happens? Those who are being exploited, they will revolt. Then it will result in the violent conflicts. And ultimately the civilization will collapse. And that is what is happening right now in Afghanistan. Or for that matter, a failed state like Iraq or Syria. Or now even Pakistan is also moving towards that. That is the reason why we need a constitution. We need a government. We need a government that would protect the lives of the people. We need a constitution that would strictly ensure implementation of rule of law in both the letter and spirit. We need a constitution that would protect the freedoms and liberties of the people. We need a constitution that would make sure that there would not be any exploitation, any discrimination. Take the case of our country, India. We have so much of diversity. We have so much of diversity in the form of religion, region, caste, ethnicity, language, gender. There can always be scope for discrimination of people. Today only Supreme Court had come out with a very good judgment. What Supreme Court has said is that this Hinduism, they said that is not a religion, it is a way of life. So Supreme Court had asked the petitioner. The petitioner has said that India was ruled by other religions for a long period of time, and they have changed the names of places and historical monuments. So they said that the petitioner has said that let us rename all of them. For example, they say that Taj Mahal, it should be renamed as something else. Similarly, various cities, various historical monuments, they should be renamed because they were under all of them were named during the Islamic rule in India, so they should be renamed. Then Supreme Court had scolded that petitioner, saying that Hinduism is not a religion, it is a way of life. And if you try to keep on bringing the past, it will only result in more conflicts. That is not what we want. We want peace, we want stability, we want welfare, we want development. We do not want to go into the past and look into renaming all those things. That is what Supreme Court. That is where we need government. We need the three organs of the state: legislature, executive, and judiciary. We need a written constitution, which can guarantee us our fundamental rights. We need a written constitution which can give us, all these rights. And we need a judiciary which can protect all those rights. That is the reason why we need a constitution. We need a people elected government also. So that is what let us start with. Why do we need a constitution? Start with why do we need a constitution? Why do we need a constitution? The natural tendency, write down, the natural tendency of any society, the natural tendency of any society is to move towards entropy. Is to move towards entropy. ENTROPY. You put it in inverted commas. Entropy. That is towards destruction, anarchy, ANARCHY, R or R, lawlessness, LAW, law, LESS, NESS, lawlessness. Next, continue with it. Human beings are always guided by self-interest. They are always guided by self-interest. There is every possibility that this self-interest, can easily transform itself into selfish interest. It can full stop. It can lead to exploitation, manipulation, and so on. Next paragraph. To prevent societies from entropy, ENTROPY, and also to prevent exploitation and manipulation, comma, a constitution is necessary. Next paragraph. It means constitution. It can protect the rights and freedoms of citizens. It can protect rights and freedoms of citizens, comma, prevent exploitation, and make governments, GOVER, governments, NMENTS, accountable to people, for their performance. It can ultimately ensure strict implementation of rule of law. The survival of any civilization depends on the ability of its administrative systems, to protect and promote the welfare of its citizens. To protect and promote the welfare of its citizens. It is possible only with It is possible only with a written constitution. Only with a written constitution. So this is what we are saying. Why do we need a constitution? This is very important because for most of the answers that you will be writing, this is the introduction. Why do we need a constitution? Why do we need a rule-based governance? Because without a rule-based governance, it becomes impossible to run any system. You need to protect the lives of people. You need to protect their freedoms. You need to protect their assets. You need to protect their properties. This is possible only with a rule-based governance. And this rule-based governance is possible with a constitution. That is the reason why we need a constitution. So what is the difference between self-interest and selfish interest? As I have said, this self-interest can easily transform itself into selfish interest. What is the difference between them? A self-interest and a selfish interest. For example, getting into services is your self-interest. Working hard for it and getting into services is what you are expected to do. After getting into services, you will use that position for your own selfish interests. You will use that position to earn money. You will use that position to get promotions. That is where selfish interest becomes difficult. For a businessman, earning profits is definitely necessary. But how does he earn profits? That becomes difficult. That becomes more difficult. If he is manipulating the people, that is where selfish interest can easily be seen. Take the case of a politician. What is the objective of a politician? To win elections, to reach positions of power, and to retain that power for longer periods of time. When he uses unethical means, then self-interest becomes selfish interest. For example, politicians are using emotional factors like religion or caste to win elections. They are appealing to voters in the name of religion, in the name of caste, in the name of ethnicity. What they are doing? They are dividing the society for their own interest. In the process, they are causing harm to the society. That is where we need to punish those people. We need to punish those businessmen who are trying to earn money through fraudulent means, through illegal means. We need to punish those officers who take bribes. We need to punish those politicians who are using these emotional factors to win elections. For all these things, we need a constitution, a rule-based governance. Otherwise, as I have said, it becomes almost impossible to run a civilization. Automatically, the civilization would come to an end. That's why we need a constitution. We need a constitution to make sure that there will be strict implementation of rule of law. We need a constitution to make sure that people are given the right to freedom of life. They are given the right to freedom of speech and expression. They are given the right to have personal liberty. They are given the right against discrimination. They are given the right against exploitation. They are given the right to equality. All this is all possible only with a constitution. Otherwise, the societies would degenerate into entropy very, very easily. That's why we need a constitution. We need a rule of law. We need elected governments. And we also need to fix accountability on the part of the governments also. For all these reasons, we need a constitution. Right? You take all the democracies in the world, all of them have a written constitution, except United Kingdom, Great Britain. Because in United Kingdom, democracy has evolved over a period of 800 years. So they know all these democratic conventions. They did not require any written constitution. Otherwise, you take any country in the world, to ensure rule-based governance, they always require a constitution. As I said, without constitution, what is the outcome? Societies would immediately degenerate into entropy, anarchy, lawlessness, and then they would also disappear. That is why we need a constitution. And that is what is happening right now, as I said, in Afghanistan. They don't have any rule-based governance. That is the reason why in Afghanistan there is no protection to the lives of the people. Before that, Afghanistan had some kind of constitution. Women were allowed to go out and read also, to educate themselves. Now with the Taliban taking over Afghanistan, they said that women should not be allowed to have any education also. There is no protection of the rights of the people. On the other hand, in our constitution, we have made this right to education a fundamental right. That is the difference between a constitutionally elected government and a dictatorship. So this is what we say about constitution. Now proceeding further, if you look at the constitutional history of India, we have to go back to the British times. In 1949, 26th November, our Constituent Assembly has formally adopted our constitution, right? And it has taken 2 years, 11 months and 18 days to frame the constitution for our country, which is the basis of governance even now also. But did this constitution come into existence overnight? Nothing happens in the world overnight. There is nothing like revolution. Everything has to be through an evolutionary process, right? You are getting into services. After getting into IAS, will you immediately become cabinet secretary, topmost position? No. It takes place over a period of 30 years. You are starting preparation for the examination. Tomorrow you take the examination and after tomorrow you are there in service? Not like that. Everything has to go through certain processes. Evolutionary is what we say. So when we talk about our constitution also, what we say is that we have opted for an evolutionary process. Our constitution is the result of so many regulating acts, so many legislations that first East India Company and later British government had enacted over a period of 200 years. Please remember, India is an ancient nation, but a very young country. A very young country. As we proceed, we'll discuss the difference between a nation and a country. A nation is a place which has so many traditions and customs and cultures that have been developed over a period of time. For example, take the case of India. India as a nation is very old, 5,000 years old. We have so much of diversity. You have so many religions, so many regions, so many languages, so many ethnicities, so many races, so much of diversity. Whereas a country is always defined in terms of geographical boundaries. A country is always defined in terms of sovereignty of their elected governments. A country has its own separate, distinct identity. India, for 5,000 years has been there, but as a country, it was united by the Britishers, and it had become independent and sovereign after we adopted our constitution. So the journey from this nation to country has been very long and very complicated process. Going back to the times, what happened? Britishers, as all of you know, have entered into India as traders. First, it was the Portuguese who came to India, then the Dutch, and then the French, and the last one to enter into India was Britishers, East India Company. So when they came to India, they were in India only for purely business purposes. The Queen had granted East India Company monopoly of trade over the whole of eastern part of the world, because in those days they did not know what were the countries also. Monopoly of trade. So initially East India Company restricted itself only to trading related activities, because even though they had come to India in 1600, at that point of time the Mughal Empire was very, very strong. And in those days, please remember, 17th and 18th centuries, India was the most powerful country in the world. Right now we say that America is the most powerful country in the world. Why? Because America's contribution to global GDP and global trade is around 25%. That means 1/4 of global GDP comes from America. 1/4 of global trade also comes from America. Right? That is the reason why we say that they are the most powerful country. Go back to 17th and 18th centuries. India was the most powerful country in the world. Why? Because more than 30% of global GDP and global trade had come from India. In those days, India was more powerful than what America is now. Since India was the richest country in the world, automatically all other countries in the world found it profitable to trade with India. Why? Because the kind of diversity that India has, they could find in India everything that they want, as part of a trade. A Russian emperor at that point of time would say that trading with India means trading with the entire world. What does it mean? If you have a trade relationship with India, you don't have to go to any other country in the world. Everything is available in India only. When Krishnadevaraya was the emperor of this Vijayanagara empire, Hampi Bazaar, you must have studied these things as part of this, your history also. Hampi Bazaar was considered the most important trading center in the world, because there they could get anything from Arabian horses to Indian spices, from Chinese this opium trade also was very, very high in those days, and from African these slaves also. Everything was there in India at that point of time. So automatically Britishers had come. But what was the major problem here? India, even though India was the most powerful country in the world, this political integration of the country was not very, very strong. It was thanks to the Mughal rulers. The Mughal emperors, they have united India. And what was the major problem with the Mughal empire? The major problem with the Mughal empire was that the stability of the empire depended only on the personality of the emperor. So that is the reason why from Babur to Aurangzeb, all those emperors were very, very strong. And that is the reason why nobody could look at India, because of the kind of wealth, the amount of army they had commanded. And what did Aurangzeb do? Aurangzeb was fighting so many wars simultaneously. He was fighting wars with Marathas. He was fighting wars with the Sikhs. He was fighting wars with the Rajputs. He was also fighting wars with the Deccan Empire also, the Nizams. Automatically what happened? The empire had become very weak. The treasury had become completely empty, because when you are fighting so many wars, it is always a costly affair. Then after Aurangzeb died in 1707, the later Mughals were not as strong as the previous ones. And suddenly, at the top, there was so much of a weakening of emperor's position. When emperor had become weak, automatically it led to the disintegration of the empire. All the regional kings started declaring independence. Marathas have declared, Rajputs have done it, and then Sikhs, they have also done it. In the south, the Sultans, Golconda, they have also declared independence. Suddenly Mughal empire had become very weak. 1707 to 1757, it was the period of political instability in India. As we study in physics, what do we say in physics? There is no scope for vacuum in nature. What do you mean by that? There is no scope for vacuum in nature. What is the meaning? I am talking about physics. There is no scope for vacuum in nature. Vacuum means empty space. If there is any empty space in nature, what happens immediately? It is filled with gases. There is no scope for vacuum in nature. This is where it gives me so much of happiness, because I have not studied physics. I don't know these things. You have studied physics. You also don't know those things. All of us are equal. Right? So this is where it gives me so much of happiness also. Right? So in the same manner, what we say is that there is no scope for vacuum in the political atmosphere also. There is no scope for empty space in the political atmosphere, political climate. So when Mughal emperor had seen a drastic decline, the decline was so drastic, nobody anticipated. Immediately someone has to fill in that vacuum. Who had filled in that vacuum? It was the Marathas. Marathas, they filled in the vacuum. Marathas, they regrouped themselves. Slowly they started occupying central India. Then they occupied the eastern part of the country. Then finally they marched towards Delhi. And they had also command over Delhi. This was the time when the third battle of Panipat took place between Marathas and Ahmad Shah Abdali. And what happened in this third battle of Panipat? Marathas were comprehensively defeated. And that was the end of what is called Maratha rule in India. That was the end of Maratha rule in India. And that means there is again vacuum at the top. Who had to fill in this vacuum? That is when these trading companies started having their political ambitions. The French, the Dutch, the British and the Portuguese. When they started having wars on Indian soil to have control over kingdoms. Ultimately, in those wars, who emerged as victorious? The British East India Company. This year, the same question was asked in your history paper also, in GS paper 1. What is the reason why the Britishers could occupy the whole of the country? Why? Because the Britishers had a very professional army. Please remember, in these kind of wars, what really matters is not the number of soldiers you have. What really matters is how professional they are. What really matters is how efficient they are. For example, take the case of the first battle of Panipat between Babur and Ibrahim Lodi. Ibrahim Lodi had 1 lakh soldiers. Babur had only 12,000 soldiers. Who should ideally win? Right? But what happened? Babur had comprehensively defeated. Why? Because in these kind of wars, what really matters is not quantity. What really matters is quality. Similarly, take the case of this Battle of Plassey between East India Company and the Nawab of Bengal. Battle of Plassey. The Nawab of Bengal had more than 50,000 soldiers. Do you know how many soldiers East India Company has? 1,500. 1,500 of them have defeated 50,000. That is the reason why in battles, numerical strength does not really matter. East India Company's army, much more professional and much more organized and systematic. So that was the reason why East India Company had occupied India very easily. And please remember, another reason why they could easily occupy the whole of the country was, in those days, there was nothing like India. There was nothing like India. Why? Because this kind of sense of nationhood, patriotism, it had come into our mindset only with the freedom movement. Before that, India was consisting of hundreds of princely states. For example, a soldier who was fighting for Marathas, and he would think that when he is fighting, say the Sikhs in Punjab, he would think that they are his enemies. Neither Marathas nor the Sikhs think that they are part of only one single country. That sense of nationhood was not there. That was the reason why it has become very, very easier for Britishers to defeat the entire country, because there was no sense of what is called Indianness. So East India Company was basically a trading organization, and suddenly, after the Battle of Plassey, suddenly they found themselves ruling a huge territory. In those days, the Bengal, the state of Bengal, you can say the Kingdom of Bengal, it consisted of the present day West Bengal, East Bengal, that is Bangladesh, and then Bihar, and then Odisha south, and Assam, further northeast. Such a huge territory the Britishers had occupied, East India Company had occupied. It was basically a trading organization, and the Bengal province at that point of time was much larger in terms of area than their own country. A small trading company from a small country, thousands of kilometers away from India, suddenly occupied a territory which was much larger than their own country. For example, to put it right now, to put it in a current context for us to understand, Mukesh Ambani going to America as a trader and occupying the whole of America, right? Occupying the whole of America. That is what happened with East India Company. East India Company. So simply they did not know how to rule the country, because it was a trading organization. It was only a trading organization. They did not know how to rule the country. So what did they do? From then onwards, they started experimenting with what is called governance. They started experimenting with governance from that time onwards, right? That is when the British government had come into picture. East India Company was only a trading organization which was given the permission by the British government. So after Battle of Plassey and Battle of Buxar, when the whole of Bengal province had come under the direct rule of East India Company, the British government felt that it is time for them to directly interfere in the activities of East India Company. That is when the British government had come out with what is called regulating acts. Their parliament started passing regulating acts. What is the objective of this regulating act? As the name itself indicates, to regulate the activities of East India Company. So what is the need for passing these regulating acts? Why? Because even though East India Company had won this Bengal province, this company was incurring huge amount of losses. A situation had come wherein they had to close down their business also in India because of the kind of losses they were incurring. Then they had approached the British Parliament, please give us loans to revive our company in India. Then British Parliament has said that we are giving taxpayers money as loans, so we should have control over your activities, right? We should have control over activities. That is how these regulating acts had come into picture. From 1773 onwards, after every 20 years, the British Parliament started passing these regulating acts. 1773, 1793, 1813, 1833 and 1853. The last regulating act was passed in 1853. And what is the content of all these regulating acts? Basically, regulating the activities of British East India Company. After 1833, the company's activities as a trading organization had come to an end, because by the time they have occupied a huge amount of territory in India, the main function is to govern the country rather than looking into trading related activities. They ended monopoly of East India Company, and East India Company was restricted to mostly political activities. Then what happened? As all of you know, 1857, the first war of independence took place. And in that first war of independence, of course, initially the revolutionaries have achieved success, but within a very short period of time, the East India Company could suppress the rebellion. After this, then the British government had realized that it is time for them to take over the administration of the country directly. 1858 Act has ended the East India Company's rule in India, and it was the British Parliament that had become the real ruler of the country. The British Queen was declared as the sovereign ruler of the country. In Britain also, you have only parliamentary democracy. So, in the name of the Queen, the entire administration is carried out by the Prime Minister and Council of Ministers. Like we have now also parliamentary democracy, wherein the entire administration is carried out in the name of the President of India. But does it mean that the President of India takes all decisions and implements those decisions? No. The President is only a nominal executive. The real executive is a Prime Minister who heads Council of Ministers. So it was the Prime Minister who heads Council of Ministers was responsible for India affairs. In the British Cabinet, in the British Council of Ministers, what did they do as part of 1858 Act? They have created a separate cabinet rank position in the British Council of Ministers called the Secretary of State for India, and he was given the full responsibility of administration of the country. But the Secretary of State would be staying in London, and London is almost 7,000 miles from India. That was the reason why in India we have had this Governor General who was given absolute powers. So from 1858 onwards, the British Parliament started making legislations for the country. 1861, Indian Councils Act was passed. Then, after that, 1885, Indian National Congress had come into existence, and this Indian National Congress had come into existence demanding more powers to people. Initially, they were asking for dominion status, and to satisfy the demands of the freedom fighters, the government started implementing various regulating acts. 1892 Indian Councils Act. Under this 1892 Indian Councils Act, for the first time, representation was given to Indians in the central legislature. They were only nominated. Indians were only nominated, right? And who were basically nominated? Mostly the members from princely states. Members from princely states, they were nominated. They were allowed to discuss, but they cannot vote. Then slowly the freedom movement was gaining momentum, and similarly, the so-called constitutional reforms were implemented by the British government. Then we had 1909, again Indian Councils Act, popularly known as Minto-Morley reforms. And what did they do? They have expanded the central legislature, and this time you have elected members also, apart from nominated members. But what did the Britishers do? As part of 1909 legislation, they introduced a communal electorate for the first time. Communal electorate. When we study, when you study this communalism in our legislative paper 1 as part of social issues, what do we say? Communalism in India had its origins in 1909 legislation. Under this communal representation, Muslims can vote only for Muslims. Similarly, other religions. So the objective is to create this kind of divide between the people. Britishers had opted for what is popularly known as divide and rule. When Mahatma Gandhi was asked about divide and rule, please remember Mahatma Gandhi, extremely intelligent politician, and also he used to have a great sense of humor. So when he was asked about this divide and rule policy of the Britishers, he said that it is completely wrong. Britishers never adopted any kind of divide and rule. He said that we divided ourselves and they ruled us. That is the reality. We Indians divided ourselves in the name of religion, in the name of caste, in the name of race, ethnicity, language. Then it had become much more easier for the Britishers to rule the entire country. The same thing, unfortunately, is now also going on. You can see our political parties keep on dividing the people. So, as part of this 1909 reforms, elections were held, and the members were given, the freedom to discuss, debate, and so on. And again, this did not satisfy our freedom fighters. That is when they came out with the 1919 Government of India Act. Right? 1919 Government of India Act. And what did they do as part of 1919 Government of India Act? From legislature, Indians were given opportunity to become part of executive. Look at how slowly the progression was taking place. In 1892, Indians were given opportunity to become part of legislature. That too only through nominations. Right? Mostly it was restricted to the British, it was restricted to the princes. 1909, it was further expanded to include elected representatives. But these elected representatives were restricted only to legislature. They did not become part of executive. As part of 1919 Government of India Act, what did they do? They introduced diarchy in provinces, dual system of governance. The entire activities of the government at the provincial level were divided into either transferred subjects and reserved subjects. Transferred subjects, as the name itself indicates, were transferred to Indian ministers, whereas reserved subjects were in the hands of governor. What were those transferred subjects? What were those transferred subjects? Education, health, sanitation, local self-governments. These were all transferred subjects. What were part of reserved subjects? Law and order, finances, then taxation, customs, irrigation. They were all part of reserved subjects. Of course, this 1919 Government of India Act had ultimately led to split in the Congress party with pro changes and no changes. Mahatma Gandhi and others were no changes. Motilal Nehru and others were pro changes. They wanted to contest elections, become part of the government and create problems for the government. That is what they have done. Then after that, when they reached positions of power, they had realized that it was a bad joke played by the Britishers. Even in case of transferred subjects also, the ministers did not have any real powers. Then after that, Simon Commission was appointed by the Britishers. In a Congress party and others have boycotted Simon Commission because there was no Indian member in Simon Commission. Then Simon Commission recommended these roundtable conferences. And the first roundtable conference was boycotted by the Congress, and Mahatma Gandhi attended second roundtable conference. So then on the basis of these discussions during roundtable conferences, the British government had come out with what is called 1935 Government of India Act. And what do we say? We say that this 1935 Government of India Act is the basis of our present day constitution. It is said that 1935 Government of India Act, our present day constitution is an extension of 1935 Government of India Act. So what did 1935 Government of India Act has introduced? Right? What did it introduce? It has introduced parliamentary form of democracy. It has introduced a federal form of government. It has introduced independent judiciary. It has introduced this division of subjects. It has introduced bicameral legislature. So these are all the things which had become in the future cornerstone of our constitution. Then the Second World War took place, and the British government had promised that once the war is ended, they will give freedom to the country. Political situation in UK also had changed. At the end of the Second World War, Labour Party had come to power. Earlier it was the Conservative Party. Churchill was the Prime Minister. Churchill was totally against giving freedom to India. Fortunately for India, Conservative Party was defeated in UK parliamentary elections. Labour Party had come to power. And Attlee had become the Prime Minister. Attlee had already come to India as part of the Cripps mission. So he knew the conditions. Labour Party fought elections, saying that once they come to power, they would provide freedom to the colonies. Another reason why India got freedom was United States of America entered into the Second World War only on the basis of the promise made by the imperial powers that they would give freedom to their colonies. That is the reason why at the end of the Second World War, the entire process of decolonization took place, as you study in your world history also. That is the reason why all those countries where there was no freedom movement also got independence from their imperial masters. Take the case of Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka there was no freedom movement. They also got independence at the same time as India. So the Britishers have declared that they would give freedom to India. You cannot just leave the country just like that. You need to create systems. Otherwise the country would lapse into anarchy. So that is the reason why in 1946 elections were held to the central legislature and an interim government was formed with Jawaharlal Nehru as the Prime Minister. And this power was transferred to this interim government so that there will be continuity. And of course, thanks to this communal representation, ultimately it led to the partition of the country on communal lines. And the independence of our country was also accompanied with partition of the country also in 1947. So we got independence, and at the same time the country was also divided into India and Pakistan. And once we got to the freedom, we need to have our own constitution, because 1935 Government of India Act was formulated by the British Parliament for a colony called India, whereas we need a constitution for our own country, a sovereign document. That is when it was decided that the central legislature would be converted into a constitutional assembly, whose basic responsibility is to formulate the constitution for the country. And it has taken 2 years, 11 months and 18 days to formulate a constitution for the country. So these are all what we call constitutional developments. And as you have told me, almost all of them have been discussed in your classes. Yes or no? Yes? Okay, so I will not be dictating these things in the class because it has already been done. Tomorrow I will give you few points, because in our prelims questions are asked. I will dictate a few points about it. Then tomorrow we will go into constitution, the features of constitution. Not tomorrow, I think tomorrow we don't have any class. Day after tomorrow. Pardon? That we will do it, no problem in the class. Right? Day after tomorrow, I will give brief notes about all these things. Then we will go to formulation of our constitution, constituent assembly and everything. Right?